In the sterile, glimmering confines of the orbiting research station, a group of alien scientists stood clustered around a holographic display, their bioluminescent skin pulsing in soft waves of curiosity. The display projected images of Earth, vibrant forests, volatile oceans, and chaotic weather patterns. One of them, a tall, insectoid figure with crystalline eyes and segmented limbs, tilted their head in contemplation. "This is the death world they speak of?" Dr. Vrok's voice resonated, smooth yet skeptical. He flicked a translucent appendage at the rotating image of Earth. "Hardly seems formidable. It is just wet." A colleague, their voice buzzing with subdued awe, responded, "It's not just the planet, Vrok. It's the creatures that inhabit it. The humans. They survive there." "Survive? Look at them." Vrok expanded a smaller hologram, zooming in on a group of humans walking along a city street. Their figures seemed soft and fragile, bundled against a brisk wind. Brittle skeletons encased in thin tissue, their sensory organs exposed to the elements. What could possibly classify these beings as Deathworlders? They appear more vulnerable than a vril larva. Yet despite his skepticism, the designation of Earth as its Class 7 Death World was irrefutable. Among the galactic consortium, Death Worlds were notorious for their deadly environments, worlds of lethal fauna, unrelenting climates, and microbial chaos. Class 7 was high on the scale, surpassed only by a handful of planets deemed entirely uninhabitable. Earth was unique. Not only did life thrive there, but its dominant species was rumored to embrace the dangers of its environment with an almost reckless fervor. "Fragile in appearance, perhaps," another scientist murmured, their bioluminescent skin flickering with caution. "But their biology is deceptively adaptable. And this adaptability is why we study them," Vrok replied, his skepticism tinged with reluctant intrigue. Dr. Elias Carter strolled into the lab, his movements loose and unhurried, a stark contrast to the rigid precision of the alien scientists. He was human, one of the first to collaborate with the extraterrestrial research team. His presence had been controversial, but Carter had a disarming charm that seemed to put even the most wary alien at ease, though his behavior often baffled them. "Morning, folks," Carter said, raising a hand in greeting. His voice carried a casual warmth as he approached the group, a battered metal flask in hand. "Dr. Carter," Vrok said, his tone clipped but polite. "Your timing is impeccable. We were just discussing your species' peculiar reputation." Carter grinned, his teeth flashing white against his suntanned skin. "Let me guess, Deathworlder, right? It's a title we wear with pride." He took a long swig from the flask, the liquid inside steaming faintly. Vrok's crystalline eyes narrowed, his attention fixating on the flask. "What are you consuming, Dr. Carter?" "Coffee," Carter replied, his grin widening. "Want some?" He extended the flask jokingly, but the aliens recoiled, their bioluminescence flaring in alarm. "Coffee?" Vrok repeated, his tone sharpening. "You mean the stimulant derived from the seeds of the coffea plant? The substance classified as a mild neurotoxin?" Carter blinked, lowering the flask. "Mild neurotoxin? It's just caffeine. It's perfectly safe. For you, perhaps?" Vrok snapped, his bioluminescence flashing in agitation. "Caffeine is a toxic alkaloid. Even minute amounts can disrupt the neural pathways of most sentient species." Carter chuckled, taking another sip. "Guess it's a good thing I'm human, then." The room fell into a stunned silence as the aliens stared at him, their expressions ranging from disbelief to horror. Carter seemed oblivious, savoring his drink with the air of someone enjoying a quiet morning. "Do you ingest other poisons regularly, Dr. Carter?" one of the scientists asked, their voice quivering. "Poisons?" Carter raised an eyebrow. "Not unless you count tequila. Oh, and spicy food. I love a good ghost pepper now and then." He laughed, but the aliens did not share his amusement. Vrok took a deliberate step forward, his voice low and serious. "Dr. Carter, your physiology must be examined immediately. If what you claim is true, it could provide unprecedented insights into why your species is so perplexing." Carter waved a hand dismissively. "Sure, go ahead. I'm used to being a guinea pig for science. Just don't make me drink anything weird. The aliens exchanged wary glances as Carter took another sip from his flask, entirely at ease. Their bioluminescent hues dimmed to an unsettled glow, reflecting a growing realization. This human, this seemingly fragile creature, might truly be as extraordinary and dangerous as the legends claimed. Vraka's crystalline eyes widened as Carter took another leisurely sip from his flask. Without warning, the alien emitted a sharp, piercing screech, a sound that reverberated through the sterile confines of the lab. Instantly, the room erupted into chaos. The other scientists scrambled into motion, their bioluminescent skin flashing erratically in shades of yellow and red, the universal signals of distress. Emergency protocols triggered automatically, sealing the room and activating containment fields. Equipment chirped warnings, and the air filled with the hum of diagnostic tools. Carter froze mid-sip, bewildered. Is everything okay? You just consumed poison. Vraka's voice cut through the commotion, his tone teetering between outrage and panic. Carter blinked. Poison? No, this is just coffee. Black coffee. Strong, sure, but hardly lethal. Caffeine, Vraka hissed, his bioluminescent glow intensifying. A toxic alkaloid known to cause severe neural disruption in concentrations as low as 5 parts per million. And you, he gestured wildly at Carter, drank an entire vessel of it. Carter looked down at his flask, then back at the aliens, a bemused grin spreading across his face. Oh, come on. It's just my morning pick-me-up. I've been drinking this stuff since college. Keeps me sharp. The aliens exchanged horrified glances. One of them, their segmented arms trembling, muttered, "How is he still standing?" Standing? I feel great, Carter said, raising the flask in mock toast. I could run a marathon right now if you wanted. Vraka's appendages twitched in frustration as he activated a holographic projection. A molecular diagram of caffeine appeared, its toxic properties highlighted in vivid red. This substance is classified as hazardous by over 97% of sentient species in the consortium. Even microdoses can result in fatal organ failure or irreversible neural damage. Carter laughed, a rich, untroubled sound that only deepened the aliens' confusion. Hazardous? Please. For humans, this stuff is practically fuel. Lifeblood, even. I've got a coffee machine back home that I call my survival gear. The room fell into an uneasy silence as the aliens tried to process this. Vrok, his skepticism giving way to incredulity, gestured toward a diagnostic station. This must be investigated. Step into the scanner. Carter shrugged, finishing the last of his coffee before setting the flask aside. Sure thing. Document, knock yourself out. The scanner enveloped him in a soft glow, lines of data streaming across a translucent display. As the analysis concluded, the room grew increasingly quiet. Vrok studied the results, his translucent skin dimming to a pale blue, a color that Carter had learned to associate with disbelief. Caffeine isn't the only anomaly, Vrok said at last, his voice faint. Your bloodstream contains traces of ethanol, a known neurotoxin. Alcohol, Carter supplied with a casual shrug. Sometimes whiskey, sometimes beer. Depends on the mood. Vraka's appendage trembled as he pointed to another highlighted compound. Capsaicin. An irritant so potent it is used in weaponized sprays. Spicy food, Carter explained cheerfully. Gotta love a good ghost pepper. Clears the sinuses. And this, Vrok paused, struggling to believe the data. Fermented organic compounds that produce a metabolic byproduct classified as mildly toxic. Kimchi, Carter said, grinning. Fermented cabbage. Delicious. The aliens recoiled, their bioluminescent patterns flickering wildly. Another scientist murmured, his species, they willingly consume these things? Regularly? Not just willingly, Carter said, but enthusiastically. You should try it sometime. Well, maybe not. Guess your biology wouldn't handle it too well. Vraka's appendages clutched at his thorax, as if he were trying to steady himself. Your species evolved to thrive on toxins? Carter smirked. Not thrive on toxins per se. But we've got an incredible tolerance for them. Call it a survival strategy. Earth isn't exactly a safe place to grow up. We had to adapt. The aliens stared at him, their silence heavy with a mix of horror and reluctant admiration. Carter, undeterred, leaned against the diagnostic console and launched into stories about human culinary adventures. He described fugu sashimi, a delicacy prepared from a poisonous pufferfish that required precision to avoid fatal poisoning. He recounted the fiery burn of Carolina Reaper peppers, eaten for sport. You see, he said, gesturing dramatically, humans don't just survive danger. We turn it into an art form. Vrock raised a trembling appendage, signaling for Carter to stop. Enough. Your biology is reckless, chaotic, and he hesitated, the faintest hint of awe creeping into his tone. Unfathomably robust. Carter clapped his hands together. Exactly. That's what makes us Deathworlders, right? The room fell into another uneasy silence as the aliens exchanged glances. Their bioluminescence dimmed to a somber gray, a sign of concern. Vrock cleared his throat, his tone regaining its clinical edge. Dr. Carter, while your resilience is remarkable, your current condition remains a cause for concern. The levels of these substances in your system are, by any reasonable metric, alarming. Carter raised an eyebrow. I feel fine. For now, Vrock said gravely. But the cumulative effects of such reckless consumption are unpredictable. You must be isolated and monitored to ensure your survival. Isolation. Carter frowned. I don't think that's necessary. It is for your own safety, Vrock insisted, though the faint glow of his bioluminescence betrayed his uncertainty. Carter sighed, raising his hands in mock surrender. Fine, fine. But let me grab another cup of coffee first. The aliens flinched, their distress intensifying as they watched him stroll toward the flask. For all their advanced knowledge, the sheer audacity of human biology, and Carter's nonchalant attitude toward it, had left them utterly unprepared. The lab settled into an uneasy quiet, the air charged with the aliens' lingering alarm. But their curiosity, a relentless force, soon broke the silence. Vrock stepped forward, his voice laced with both frustration and fascination. Dr. Carter, why does your species do this? Why would you willingly ingest toxins or engage in practices that threaten your survival? Carter chuckled, folding his arms. Why? Because it's fun. The alien's bioluminescence flickered in unison, a ripple of disbelief. Another scientist leaned in, their tone incredulous. Fun? Consuming substances that could kill you? Subjecting your body to extremes? Carter nodded, clearly enjoying their confusion. You've got to understand, we didn't just evolve to survive. We evolved to adapt. Earth is brutal. Dangerous predators, unpredictable weather, diseases you wouldn't believe. We had to get creative. Take toxins, for example. Early humans figured out that cooking over fire could neutralize harmful compounds in food. Fermentation? That wasn't just for a good time. It preserved our food and made it safer to eat. The aliens exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. Vrock tilted his head. And spices? Capsaicin? Why subject yourselves to something painful? 2 reasons, Carter said, holding up his fingers. 1, spices helped keep food from spoiling, antimicrobial properties and all that. 2, humans love a good challenge. It's part of who we are. A challenge, another scientist echoed, baffled. You willingly seek discomfort and risk? Carter grinned. Not just risk, adventure. It's how we're wired. We've been staring danger in the face since day one. And we learned to thrive because of it, not in spite of it. Vrock turned away, pacing as his bioluminescence dimmed in thought. This mindset, it is alien to us. Our species survive by avoiding danger, by minimizing risk wherever possible. To do otherwise would be irrational. That's the thing, Carter said. Humans aren't always rational. We're driven by curiosity, by the need to push boundaries. It's not enough for us to survive. We want to conquer the challenges around us. Vrock stopped pacing, his voice quieter now. Conquering challenges even at great personal cost. Such a mindset explains much of your species' reputation. But it is reckless. Carter shrugged. Maybe. But it works. I mean, look where it's gotten us. We didn't just survive Earth, we thrived. And now we're out here, working alongside you. The room fell into thoughtful silence, the aliens grappling with the sheer audacity of Carter's words. The concept of deliberately courting danger for progress, or even enjoyment, was utterly foreign to them. Breaking the silence, Carter leaned casually against a console. You think this is bad? Wait until I tell you about some of the stunts humans pull for fun. The aliens turned their attention back to him, hesitant but unable to suppress their curiosity. Let's start with Mount Everest, Carter said, his grin widening. A massive mountain on Earth, so tall it punches through the atmosphere. Temperatures so cold they can freeze your lungs, air so thin you can barely breathe. And what do? We climb it. Thousands of people risk their lives every year just to stand at the top for a few minutes. Vrock visibly recoiled, his bioluminescent patterns swirling in alarm. That is incomprehensible. The risks are insane, Carter finished for him. But the reward? The view from the top, the feeling of conquering nature itself? Worth it. Another scientist, their voice quivering with unease, asked, and this is common among your peoples? Absolutely, Carter said with a laugh. Take deep-sea diving. Imagine descending into the pitch-black ocean, where the pressure could crush you like a tin can, and the only light comes from bioluminescent creatures. We do that, too. For exploration, for research, and, yeah, for fun. Vrock's crystalline eyes narrowed as he studied Carter. Your species does not merely endure danger. You seek it out. You embrace it. Carter nodded. And we make it our own. Take chili peppers. Some are so spicy they feel like you're eating fire. But we love them. We've even turned them into competitions. Who can eat the spiciest one without crying? The aliens recoiled again, their bioluminescence dimming to a pale green hue of distress. You choose pain, one of them whispered, as though unable to fathom the concept. Pain, discomfort, risk, they're all part of growth, Carter said. Humans figured out a long time ago that if you never leave your comfort zone, you never really live. Sure, we fall down sometimes, but we get back up stronger. Vrock remained silent for a moment, his bioluminescent patterns flickering with thought. Finally, he spoke, his tone contemplative. Perhaps that is what makes your species unique. Where we see danger, you see opportunity. Where we see limits, you see challenges to overcome. It is unsettling, but also admirable. Carter smiled. I'll take that as a compliment. The aliens stood in thoughtful silence, their perspective of humanity irrevocably altered. Carter's words had shaken the foundation of their understanding, leaving them both horrified and awed by the indomitable spirit of the Deathworlders. Alarms blared throughout the lab as the atmosphere shifted, an acrid tang filling the air. Warning lights bathed the sterile environment in red, casting frantic shadows over the alien scientists as they darted toward the secure zones. Vrock's voice echoed above the chaos. Containment breach. Neurotoxin levels rising. His bioluminescence pulsed a stark, urgent yellow, signaling the severity of the crisis. Carter stood frozen for a moment, watching the aliens scatter with an urgency that bordered on terror. Neurotoxin? He asked, his voice calm but edged with curiosity. It is airborne. Vrock shouted from behind a sealed observation panel. Highly lethal to nearly all known species. You must retreat to safety immediately. Carter glanced at the empty room around him, then at the retreating forms of the scientists. Too late for that, isn't it? He sniffed the air experimentally. Smells weird, but I feel fine. The alien scientist's skin flashed red with disbelief. Fine? The compound disrupts neural transmission, leading to paralysis and eventual shutdown of major organ systems. Exposure is fatal within minutes. Not for me, apparently. Carter's tone remained light, though his brow furrowed in concentration. From behind the containment glass, Vrock clutched his thorax in visible distress. This is no time for bravado, human. Your physiology cannot. Relax, Carter interrupted, waving a hand. I'm not bravadoing. I mean it, I'm okay. A little sweaty, maybe. He swiped a hand across his brow for emphasis. Vrock stared in stunned silence, his bioluminescence fading to a pale, disbelieving blue. This toxin is lethal even in trace amounts. Your species cannot. Look, I don't know how to explain it, Carter said, coughing lightly. Maybe my liver is working overtime. Or my immune system is kicking in. Either way, I've got it covered. The aliens could only watch in horrified awe as Carter moved toward the console displaying the breach's origin. His movements were steady, his breathing slightly labored but far from distressed. Let me guess, Carter said, tapping at the console. This toxin wasn't designed with humans in mind. Probably screws up neural pathways in species like yours, huh? Fragile nervous systems, and all that. Vrock hesitated before replying. Yes. The compound targets synaptic activity. It is incomprehensible that you remain functional. Carter grinned despite the situation. Well, humans have a knack for not making sense. As he worked, the telltale signs of his body's resilience became evident. His skin glistened with sweat, his lungs heaved slightly, but his hands remained steady on the controls. Feels like a bad flu, he muttered. Unpleasant, sure, but manageable. The aliens exchanged looks, their bioluminescence shifting in patterns of shock and disbelief. One scientist murmured, "He is adapting in real time." Vrock leaned closer to the glass, his tone both fascinated and horrified. Explain. How is this possible? Evolution, Carter replied simply. Earth's filled with stuff trying to kill us. We had to get good at surviving. My liver's probably breaking this toxin down as we speak. Immune system's tagging along for backup. He paused to cough, then continued. Oh, and don't forget redundancy. If one system fails, another picks up the slack. That is unprecedented, Vrock said, his bioluminescence flickering erratically. No other species possesses such biological versatility. Guess that's why you call us Deathworlders, Carter quipped, inputting commands to isolate the breach. He gestured toward a damaged vent spewing faint wisps of gas. There's your problem. Hang tight, I'll seal it. The aliens watched, paralyzed with a mix of fear and awe, as Carter moved toward the vent. The toxin's effects were apparent in his shallow breaths and occasional wince, but his determination never wavered. Carter, this is reckless, Vrock shouted. You should not. Relax, Carter interrupted again. I've got this. He ripped a maintenance panel off the wall and pulled out a toolkit, ignoring the thin sheen of sweat dripping from his forehead. With methodical precision, he worked to seal the vent, replacing damaged components and redirecting airflow. The seconds stretched into what felt like hours as the aliens held their collective breath, their bioluminescence flickering anxiously. Finally, with a triumphant snap, Carter secured the last piece into place. The hissing gas subsided, and the alarms dimmed. Carter wiped his hands on his pants, leaning against the wall to catch his breath. There. All patched up, the room fell silent except for the sound of Carter's steadying breaths. The alien stared at him as if he were an apparition. You repaired the breach, Vrock said, his voice barely above a whisper. While exposed to lethal levels of toxin. Yeah, no big deal, Carter replied, coughing lightly into his hand. Just another day in the life of a Deathworlder. Vrock's bioluminescence pulsed faintly, signaling awe. Your resilience defies every known biological standard. To endure such exposure, let alone function. Carter shrugged. Told you humans are built for this kind of thing. We're stubborn like that. Another scientist whispered. He did not merely endure. He acted. He saved us. The weight of the moment hung heavily in the room. Carter, despite his exhaustion, flashed them a reassuring smile. So, are you finally convinced we've earned that Deathworlder titles? Vrock's bioluminescence glowed brighter, signaling agreement. Beyond any doubt, Dr. Carter. Your species is extraordinary. Carter chuckled softly, wiping his brow again. Thanks. Now, if you'll excuse me, I could really use some water. Maybe a nap, too. As the lab systems returned to normal, the aliens could only watch as Carter walked away, their perception of humanity forever changed. The resilience they had witnessed was not just physical, It was a testament to the indomitable spirit of the Deathworlders. In the aftermath of the crisis, the lab returned to an uneasy calm. The aliens, once so confident in their scientific understanding, now found themselves humbled. Vrock stood at the central console, his bioluminescence dimmed to a contemplative hue. "It seems," he began, his voice unusually quiet, "we underestimated not just your physiology, but your species' very essence, Dr. Carter." The other scientists gathered around, their glowing patterns rippling with uncertainty and awe. One spoke hesitantly. "We assumed your survival was a matter of chance or resilience, but it is more than that. You adapt, you embrace challenges in ways we could never fathom." Vrock nodded slowly. "Humans do not merely endure adversity. You wield it. Your strength is not just in your biology, but in your mindset. That is what truly defines you as Deathworlders." Carter, now sitting casually on a lab stool, looked up from his mug of coffee and grinned. "You finally get it. We don't survive despite the crazy stuff Earth throws at us. We survive because of it. All those trials made us who we are." The aliens exchanged glances, their bioluminescence brightening slightly, signaling agreement. Vrock studied Carter intently. "And yet, you do not fear these challenges." "Why?" Carter leaned back, tapping his mug thoughtfully. "Fear's part of it, sure. But fear's useful. It keeps you sharp. The trick is not letting it stop you. Humans learned that a long time ago. We face danger head-on, learn from it, and come out stronger." He chuckled. "Or sometimes just more stubborn." Vrock tilted his head. "Stubbornness seems insufficient to explain your survival." "You'd be surprised," Carter said, raising an eyebrow. "Half the time, it's sheer stubbornness that gets us through. That and knowing how to turn a bad situation into a good one. Take this toxin thing, for example. Most species would have shut down the moment it hit their systems. But me? My body's already working overtime, figuring out how to neutralize it for the next time." Another alien scientist stepped forward, her bioluminescence pulsing in quiet admiration. "What you call stubbornness, we might call ingenuity. Your ability to adapt and improve is unparalleled." Carter laughed. "We'll take it as a compliment. But if I had one piece of advice for you, it's this. Don't shy away from adversity. Embrace it. Find a way to turn it into a strength. That's how we got from caves to space stations." Vrock's glow brightened as he processed Carter's words. "Perhaps that is the greatest lesson you offer us. For too long, we have avoided danger, viewing it as an insurmountable threat. But you see it as a challenge to overcome, a tool for growth." Carter raised his mug in mock salute. "Exactly. You'll be amazed at what you can achieve when you stop running and start figuring things out." The room fell into a reflective silence, the aliens absorbing the implications of Carter's advice. Slowly, a new understanding began to take root. Vrock turned to the others. "If humans can thrive under such conditions, their perspective may offer us insight into challenges we have long avoided. They could be invaluable allies, not just for their resilience, but for their philosophy." Another scientist nodded, her glow a soft, contemplative green. "Their adaptability could guide us in situations where our caution has failed us. Perhaps the galaxy has more to learn from humanity than we anticipated." Vrock turned back to Carter, his tone carrying a hint of respect. "Dr. Carter, it seems your species offers more than we ever imagined. Your resilience, your mindset, it is not merely survival. It is evolution in its purest form." Carter shrugged, his grin widening. "Well, we aim to please. Besides, it's always fun to keep you guys on your toes." Vrock's expression shifted, an uncharacteristic flicker of humor passing across his features. "If by fun you mean bewildering us at every turn, then you have succeeded." Carter raised his mug again. "Cheers to that." He took a long sip, savoring the moment. The aliens watched him, still baffled but now undeniably impressed. One of them cautiously held up a flask of water. "To resilience?" Carter's grin softened, and he raised his mug in return. "To learning from each other. And to making the galaxy a little less boring." As they exchanged toasts, water for the aliens, coffee for Carter, A quiet camaraderie began to form. The gap between their worlds didn't seem so vast anymore. The aliens, once skeptics of humanity's chaotic nature, now saw it as a strength that could guide them into uncharted territories. For the first time, Vraka's bioluminescence glowed with a steady, hopeful hue. Perhaps there is much we can learn from you, Dr. Carter. And much you can teach the galaxy. Carter leaned back, his expression a mix of pride and mischief. Oh, you have no idea.